Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. My name is Charles Laramie. I'm an independent candidate for governor for the state of Vermont, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit tonight about the recent debates between the Republican and the Democratic candidates for governor. Before I do that, however, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Vermont, attended local high schools. I served in the Navy and the Air Force, and after being honorably discharged, I returned to Vermont where I attended college. I worked in the roofing industry for 10 years, and then I taught in Vermont public schools for the past 25 years. This gives me a good idea of the issues currently facing education. One of the reasons I decided to get into the governor's race was I met with Governor Scott back on April 5th in his office, and we discussed education in Vermont, the state of education. Governor Scott asked me at one point if cell phones were a problem in the school. As a teacher, and any teacher would know that cell phones are definitely a big issue in our schools today. I told Governor Scott that we had a lot of difficulties, things that were going on and needed to be fixed, and Governor Scott seemed to agree with me. And about a month later, he was still talking that education in Vermont was doing really well, and we were one of the best in the country. And at that point, I just felt that if I was going to get my point across, I was going to have to step up and join the race and try and get my views out. So that's what I've done. I've been going around the state trying to talk to as many people as I can about what's going on. And I was a little naive getting into this race because I thought that once I did, I would be able to take part in the debates. And this is what I found I was not able to do. The mainstream media decided that only the Republican and Democratic candidates would be allowed into the debates. So we were excluded, and this has disenfranchised a lot of Vermont voters. So last night, Governor Scott and candidate Hallquist met for the last time during the general election for Vermont governor, and the debate was held. And once again, neither candidate was ready or willing to answer any questions. Once again, the moderator was incapable or unwilling to hold the candidates' feet to the fire and ask the tough questions. The state of Vermont's public school system and the state's economy are the most pressing issues facing Vermonters today. And yet these two candidates in 4 debates have yet to mention either one. The reason for this is they have no understanding of how to fix it, and responding to it would make them look woefully uninformed, and so they discuss education from the fringes. They talk about Act 46, they praise the state of education in Vermont, and they say it is one of the best. It is not one of the best. It is, however, one of the most expensive. Governor Scott states that Act 46 came about before he became governor, and there's nothing he can do but enforce the law. Democratic candidate Hallquist says she would be willing to talk to districts that don't want to consolidate, but ultimately, in the end, she believes that she would be able to talk them into this. If elected governor, I would repeal Act 46. A state's education system reflects its future economy. Based on that, Vermont's future economy is in trouble. The first thing these two candidates should have said in regards to Vermont's public school system is that all cell phones and iPads would no longer be allowed inside Vermont public schools. Many studies released this summer in the United States found that these items have a negative impact on a student's ability to learn. Inside the public school is where the real problems lie, and Governor Scott nor Ms. Hallquist have any understanding of this. In Bethel versus Frazier, a school court case, Justice Warren Berger stated, that schools have an obligation not to have vulgar or obscene language inflicted on unsuspecting teenagers. In the current school environment, that happens on a daily basis, and little is done about it. And it creates a toxic environment in the school and makes it extremely difficult for others to learn. This was something public school teachers already knew without the help of any studies being undertaken. The second thing they should have stated is the number of supervisory unions should be decreased to a manageable number that could save the Vermont taxpayer well over $100 million in the process. What Vermont needs to do is to downsize the supervisory unions and create it so that there's 3 for each county. This would drop the number of supervisory unions to 42 and save Vermont taxpayer hundreds of millions of dollars. Next is to downsize or eliminate the Agency of Education and to repeal Act 46. Too many taxpayer dollars are going to fund the high cost of administration that does nothing for the education of Vermont students. Neither Scott nor Holoquist have been willing to speak to any of what I have mentioned. Nothing will change if either of them is elected. Looking at the debates for the 4th time during the general election for Vermont governor, a debate was held for the Republican and Democratic candidates only. And once again, neither candidate was ready or willing to answer any questions. Once again, the moderator was incapable or unwilling to hold the candidates' feet to the fire and ask the tough questions. The state of Vermont's public school system and the state's economy are the 2 most pressing issues facing Vermonters. And yet these 2 candidates in 4 debates have yet to mention it. The reason for this is they have no understanding of how to fix it, and responding to it would make them look woefully uninformed, and so they discuss education from the fringes. They talk about Act 46. They praise the state of education in Vermont and say it is one of the best. It is not the best. It is, however, one of the most expensive. When asked about Act 46, Governor Scott said there was nothing he could do. It was already in place when he came in, and he has to follow the law. Candidate Hallquist has said she would be willing to compromise, meaning she would be willing to talk to the towns that do not want to consolidate and ultimately convince them to consolidate their districts. Orwell recently was forced to consolidate. They also failed to address how bad Vermont's economy is. And instead, Scott states Vermont has an unemployment rate around 3%. The reality is that unemployment is likely around 10 to 12%. The unemployment rate only considers those collecting an unemployment check. There are thousands of Vermonters whose benefits have expired, have dropped out of the workforce out of frustration, or are simply not looking or wanting to work. There are also thousands who work under the table, and a whole separate economy that never gets discussed. This economy will continue as long as wages are low and taxes are high. None of this has come up in any of the 4 debates. The Republican candidate simply says he is opposed to a livable wage, while the Democratic candidate says she is for it. However, she then slides in that she will sign a carbon tax. This will nullify any benefit of the livable wage and will likely make things worse. Both candidates are bad for Vermont. They refuse to answer any question in a straightforward manner, instead trying to play both sides of it to please every voter. This can't be done. Vermonters around the state need to wake up to this reality. The Republican and Democratic parties have an agenda, and the health of Vermont schools and its economy is not on it. It's time for change. At the end of the debate, the executive director of VPR told the viewing audience, "Now you have all the information you need to make an informed decision." This, of course, is not true. As I have said, there has now been 5 debates. Only one of them, Channel 17, Rights and Democracy in Burlington, hosted all the candidates, and that was on Community Access TV. The other debates, hosted by WEV Radio, Vermont Digger, WCAX, and VPR PBS, excluded all but the Republican and Democratic candidates. These 5 media outlets, along with the Republican and Democratic candidates, have disenfranchised you, the Vermont voter. They have done this because they have decided they have the ability and they have the right to choose who they believe to be the best candidate for you. This is not how a democratic republic is supposed to work. It is you, the Vermont voter, who is supposed to determine who the best candidate is. And it is the Vermont media whose real job is to introduce those candidates to you through stories and debates. They have failed you in this. I encourage you to find out more about me and any of the other candidates on the ballot and determine for yourself who is the best candidate to lead Vermont forward. I am confident that if you do this, you will find that I am that candidate. Remember, this election is about Vermont. It's about you. It's about your kids. It's about the future. So when you go out there to make a decision, ask yourself, is the Republican Party, is the Democratic Party making things easier for you and for Vermont? Do you feel that change is taking place? The two-party system in Vermont and in the United States seems to be broken. Today in Vermont, we have a chance. We have a chance for change, and that change is an independent party. So when you go to the poll, think about Charles Laramie, independent candidate for governor, and make your decision based on what you feel Vermont is and what you'd like it to become. And if you want real change, vote Charles Laramie, independent, for governor.